tired. I'm really, really tired of the manipulation. They do not tell the truth. They're lying. They're lying. They're lying. They're lying. They're lying.
After 5 months of testimony, nearly 60 witnesses on the stand, thousands of documents to review, 13 hours were enough for a jury to conclude the AG Live has no responsibility for Michael Jackson's death, finding that the doctor hired by them, Cora Murray, was fit and competent to provide him general medical care. Cora Murray caused Michael's death, was convicted of involuntary manslaughter in 2011, getting the maximum sentence of 4 years, but already released thanks to a new law about prison overcrowding signed by California Governor Jerry Brown that went into effect just when Murray's trial started. Legal analyst Beth Cars reported that the decision to pursue the lesser charge of involuntary manslaughter, a crime affected by the new law, was made by the Los Angeles County District Attorney Steve Cooley. As you can see, both the Democratic Browns and the Republican Cooley's campaign got the biggest contributions from AEG in the exact time frame of Cora Murray's arraignment. Having studied and weighed every document presented in Jackson's lawsuit against AG Live, the undersigned of this statement was names we are going to read on the screen, and I, as spokesperson, refuse to accept the verdict. We are supported in our views by numerous legal professionals, including a Superior Court judge and Michael Jackson's lead defense counsel from 2005, Thomas Masur, a seasoned professional who also expected AG Live to be found liable. The evidence in this case was overwhelming that Cora Murray was unfit and incompetent to perform medical assistance to Michael Jackson, that AG Live negligently supervised the doctor about whom people really close to Michael addressed them with big concerns. Everything suggests us that the jury rushed to make a decision without setting aside an adequate amount of time to review all they've been asked to consider. And the statements made by the jury foreman, Greg Barden, right after the verdict, and by Juror 27, who joined a forum supportive of AG a little more than 24 hours after leaving the court, strengthened our belief. A lack of memory suffered by them about something so crucial like their vote after such a short time is not admissible. So let's see why nothing adds up in their arguments. Firstly, question number 1. Did AG Live hire Cora Murray? This was the crux of the case, and the fact that the AG tried to deny since when it became a legal dispute. Even though, just days after Michael's death, AG Live CEO Randy Phillips stated in a worldwide interview with Sky News,
and the guy's willing to leave his practice for a very large sum of money, so we hired him.
On the basis of his words, media would report that the AG hired Cora Murray still in 2010. But when Catherine Jackson and Michael's children filed the lawsuit in September, AG changed their version. According to Juror 27, the jury cast their first vote without even consulting the necessary instructions. Only after voting did they stop to remind themselves of what they had been asked to scrutinize. Doing so, they ignored what was recommended in the jury instructions. Please, at the beginning of your deliberations, do not immediately announce how you plan to vote, as it may interfere with an open discussion. Again, about question number 2, they voted right away. But what may or may not have happened afterwards is unclear, since the jury foreman and Juror 27 gave conflicting accounts of the same events. Barden said,
the thought when we took an initial vote right away, and it was 12-0, and then we started looking at the question, and we realized that not everybody was on the same page as to what the question meant. So we started discussing it, and as we discussed it, people said, whoa, I got to change my vote on that. So they changed their vote, and then we started discussing it further. And we got down to an 8-4 type of thing. And of course, an 8-4 would be a hung jury, so of course we didn't want that. We wanted to continue discussing it. And so like I said, we took the night off, we came home, and then we went back in this morning, and some of the jurors asked really good questions, and other jurors were able to interject things.
Conversely, Juror 27 said that during their initial vote, he ignored the "for which it was hard" portion of the question, and he voted yes. That means the juror's first vote was not a unanimously reached 12-0, but at least 11-1. Who is lying and why? Another proof of the juror's inconsistency arose from Barden's words when he said,
Had the word unethical been in there, it may have went the other way. Dr. Murray was unethical. He was definitely unethical, so that was incredibly unethical. But he had a license. He was a doctor because he graduated from an accredited university, because he had no complaints against him. He had no malpractice lawsuits. He was fit at that time to be a general practitioner.
what evidence exactly would the jurors have consulted if the word unethical had been included in question number 2? No complaints, no malpractice lawsuits. Remember that? Barden can only refer to the evidence that came into existence after Michael Jackson's death. And here, Murray's incompetence is clear. He, a trained medical doctor with 20 years experience, performed CPR one-handed on a bed, even after the 911 call was made, and he and bodyguard Alvarez were instructed to move Michael to the floor, something they never did, as when the paramedics arrived, Michael had not been moved. He, a trained doctor, failed to call 911 immediately, instead using the precious time to hide evidence. That's why the juror 27 had to admit he had a problem with what the jury foreman said. In juror 27's words, because it mixes up the timelines, and also if the word unethical was included in the question, jurors would still have to assess whether AG knew that at the time they hired Cora Murray. So, naturally, you would expect the jury instructions to indicate a specific time period, wouldn't you? The truth is that not a single final jury instruction required the jurors to focus their attention on the time of Murray's hiring. Not a single one. And when one compares all the drafts of the jury instructions, it becomes clear that AG lawyers were adverse to the word supervision when describing the relationship between AG Lab and Cora Murray. Instead, they reduced it to hiring or retention only. But Jackson's lawyers successfully argued for the inclusion of supervision in the final draft. Thus, the jurors were expected to assess the whole period of Murray's employment with AG Lab, not just the specific moment when he was hired. In his closing arguments, Jackson's lawyer Brian Penish stressed more than once that the jury could find Cora Murray unfit or incompetent at any time during the period he was hired by AG, but the jurors ignored him and the final jury instructions they were given. They concluded that Dr. Murray was fit and competent in the sphere of general care, since that's what he was hired for. But disregarding what they actually had been asked to consider, they overlooked the fact that Cora Murray proved his complete incompetence as a general practitioner time and time again. Murray ignored his patient's failing physical health. Michael was so weak towards the end that he was unable to perform the multiple spins he had been able to do at the beginning of rehearsals. Murray paid no heed when his patient began rambling and obsessing, or when his body temperature dropped to icy cold. On one occasion, June 13th, Murray did notice something was wrong with his patient. he gave Michael sick leave, but quickly withdrew it, where Randy Phillips started calling him, and Paul Gongewer sent emails demanding the doctor be reminded AG, not MJ, is paying his salary and what is expected of him, a result of which Michael had to appear at rehearsals the next Monday, though still being in a very bad state. Murray ignored Michael's shocking weight loss. Michael's frame was skeletal, a condition remarked upon by numerous concerned witnesses and confirmed by the fact that the stage clothes for him had to be fixed again and again. That's how Michael appeared on June 19th. A few hours later, the associate producer of the tour called the director on the phone and screamed that Michael Jackson was dying and that he needed urgent help. For this entire period, Cara Murray was Michael Jackson's personal doctor. He saw these events. He witnessed these concerns each and every day. What general care he was providing? How could he be considered a fit and competent doctor when he watched his patient slowly decline in the last 8 weeks of his life? Incompetence was a regular pattern with Dr. Murray, and if the jurors noticed his poor ethics, they should have noticed his incompetence too. After pointing out the inconsistencies and contradictions in jurors' arguments, let us show what to us suggests prejudice and double standards operating by them. Let's listen to a statement by juror Kevin Smith after the verdict.
Michael Jackson was pretty used to getting his own way. He was a big star. He had all these doctors who wanted to be his doctor, and he could pretty much get what he wanted. And if anybody said no, well, they were out of the mix, and he'd find somebody else.
It's not our feeling, but the fact on the record that juror Kevin Smith, during the jury selection, stated that he felt Michael Jackson should have worked on his ethics because he didn't do anything good with his life. He voiced a very strong opinion, don't you think? That's fine. Plaintiff's lawyers tried to have him excused, but they didn't succeed. And how about juror 27's statements about the testimony in this case? Brian Pench played a video montage of all the AG executives answering "I don't recall," "I don't remember" to questions focused on the content of emails they themselves wrote and sent and put in front of their eyes during their testimony. Juror 27 said it appears reasonable to him, this loss of memory, even if evidence demonstrated that AG representatives were perfectly capable of remembering what happened.
I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't remember.
I don't remember.
I don't remember it.
I don't remember this email.
I don't remember receiving this email.
I do not remember the specific email.
I'm not going to go through every one. That gives you a little flavor. Those are the people that they want you to base your verdict on. Is that bringing you the whole truth? Oh, we, AAG, we want the whole truth. Really? Really?
But the same juror characterized as pretty vague and incorrect Michael Jackson's eldest son Prince's testimony when he testified that on 2 separate occasions, when his father was out of the house, he saw AGCO Randy Phillips talking privately with Cara Murray, grabbing his elbow and looking aggressive. The juror said that Prince was only 12 when these events took place. Yes, but he was a 12-year-old who promptly called his father on the phone to inform him of Phillips' presence at the house. And as a 16-year-old, he never was evasive on the stand. He admitted that he isn't very good with dates, so he could not recall precisely if one of the private conversations between Randy Phillips and Cara Murray took place one night before his father died or 2 nights before. But he did vividly remember seeing the 2 separate conversations, even when the lawyer for the defense tried to confuse him during the cross-examination, as the court transcripts show. So, we don't believe the jurors when they state that they made their decision solely in accordance with the jury instructions and what was proven during the trial. Our views are based on the evidence presented till now and on other numerous solid arguments that we are willing and able to give. That's impossible to cover in this short video. Just because our conclusions are different from those of the jury, it doesn't mean that we have arrived at them by objectively weighing and analyzing the facts. AG Live is responsible for Michael Jackson's death.
Right now we're concentrating on 10 shows. That's what Michael's agreed to.
We treated his vulnerability, slapping him, pressuring him, threatening him to pull the plug, reading him the riot act. That's why he told his son Prince, they are going to kill me. This is the only truth we'll keep fighting for. It's with gratitude, respect and true affection that we wish to send our support to Michael's mother, Mrs. Catherine Jackson, and to his 3 wonderful children, Prince, Paris and Blanket. We thank you deeply for enduring so much in a bid to seek the truth and for giving us all the chance to stay loyal to your son and your father. We can all imagine what all this means to you, and we are very impressed by your courage to go on in this fight that we will support till the end. Prince, Paris and Blanket, you are his only true legacy. Please remember always that there are millions of people around the world supporting you with love and prayers. You are not alone, not now, not ever. We look forward to seeing your father's estate in your hands. We will always be there, always care. He lives in you, he lives in us. We are one family, united by our desire to heal the world. We love you more, and always will.
All I wanna say is that they don't really care about us. Don't what people say, we know the truth. All I wanna say is that they don't really care about us. Enough is enough of this story.
Carlo Moreno from Rome, Italy. I do not believe AG, and I support Catherine Jackson and MJ3.
Hi everyone, my name is Rebecca from Mexico and I support Catherine Jackson.
And I just want to say that I love you so much.
chiedo ad AEG e tutto il mio supporto va ora a Catherine Jackson e ai figli di Michael, Prince, Paris e Blanket. Chiedo venga fatta giustizia per Michael. La verità deve prevalere. I love you Michael, I love you more.
I want you to know that I appreciate my fans very much on all occasions like this, but every day of my life, it is your presence, your faith, your loyalty that has given me great strength during difficult times. And over the years, we became a family, all of us. My children are your children. It was you. It was you who put your heart on the line. It was you who stepped forward to defend someone you love. It was you on a worldwide basis who supported me as my army, my soldiers of love. You were always there. You were always loyal. And I love you forever, Triple.